Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're talking about the Gitrog Ravenous Ride Commander deck. The Gitrog is one of my favorite creatures, and of course this is a brand new card from the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set. So let's dive right in and see what this creature does. So the Gitrog Ravenous Rider is 3 black-green legendary creature, Frog Horror Mount. I like that a lot. Mount, notably, is a new type, and we'll get into its ability, but this has Trample and Haste, which I very much like. Whenever the Gitrog Ravenous Rider deals combat damage to a player, you may sack a creature that saddled it this turn. If you do, draw X cards, then put up to X land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tap, where X is a sacrifice creature's power, and you can saddle it for 1. So the way that saddle works is sort of like vehicles, except these creatures could already attack because they're already creatures, except you get extra benefit off of saddling it. So if you want to check out some of the other cards that just came out in this set, I don't think many of them are as powerful as the Gitrog here, but there are some notable, pretty cool cards that I think give you some cool value later in the game when maybe you need it, or that you have a little creature in your hand that really doesn't do much. Well, for just 1 power, you can saddle the Gitrog monster. So the first set of cards I want to look at here is going to be all talking about big stuff, right? Because we want to get maximum value off of the Gitrog monsters, sacking, maybe drawing 10 plus cards and putting 10 plus lands potentially onto the battlefield would be pretty insane. This is one of those decks I think you could really build it super land heavy, especially if you're playing the other Gitrog monsters. I have 40 lands in this deck right now, but I think you could arguably play a lot more because guess what? You draw a bunch of cards and then you get to put a ton of lands onto the battlefield. So you're really not going to have as much issue playing all of those lands as maybe you would in a different deck. Let's look at this first category about big stuff, and in particular, let's see lands equal power. So we have Blackblade Reforged, Greensleeves Maro Sorcerer, and Multani Yavamaya's Avatar. So one of the notable things here is that all of these things power up based on the number of lands you have. So maybe Blackblade Reforged goes on the Gitrog monster, or maybe you put it on another creature, and then when you sack it, after you saddle that creature with it, you get all of that benefit from all those +1/+1s on it. So Blackblade Reforged, 2 generic artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. You can equip it to a legendary creature for 3 or a regular creature for 7. So, you're really going to want to do this on your legendary creatures, but there's a good number of big ones in this deck. Greensleeves Marrow Sorcerer is 3 green legendary creature elemental, protection from planeswalkers and from wizards. And when Greensleeves Marrow Sorcerer power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and then whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, put a 3/3 green badger creature token. So this is kind of going to fall into our second set of cards I'm going to talk about a little bit later, talking about landfall effects, because we're going to get a lot of stuff with the Gitrog here. But notably, he just gets bigger with the more stuff we have on the battlefield. And then we have Multani Yavamaya's Avatar, 4 green legendary creature elemental avatar with reach and trample. Multani Yavamaya's Avatar gets +1/+1 for each land you control, and each land card in your graveyard, which can be good because if we, just have stuff we need to pitch to the bin at some point, that counts as well. But for 1 and a green, return 2 land cards you control to their owner's hand. Return this to your hand. So that's pretty cool because it does have trample and reach, giving us some protection in the air, and then also just another big threat to kind of rumble in with. So let's look at these next set of cards here that I'm calling big for less. And these are all big creatures that we're not paying very much mana for because they have some bad abilities, but the Gitrog doesn't care about that because we're just going to sack them anyways. So first off, we have Ghalta Primal Hunger, Hunted Horror, and Phyrexian Soul Gorger. So Ghalta here is actually pretty good. There's no downside to playing Ghalta, except the more power you have on the board, the less Ghalta costs, which is great for us because that's our plan for this deck entirely. So most likely, you're going to be paying 2 green mana to cast this. This spell costs X as to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. It also has trample. Hunted Horror, one of my favorite cards from the original Ravnica set, is black creature horror with trample. When Hunted Horror enters battlefield, target opponent creates 2 3/3 green centaur creature tokens with protection from black. Notably here, you're going to give somebody some creatures that have protection from black, and yes, we do have some black creatures, but the Gitrog has trample, so as long as this is powered up some, that's really not going to matter too much. And then Phyrexian Soul Gorger is 3 generic mana, snow artifact creature construct, cumulative upkeep, sack a creature. We'll probably have some stuff we can sack if we really want to keep that around, but for just 3 mana we can cast it, then sack it on attack with the Gitrog. So this is a very cool effect. And then the last set of cards in this big power section is double power for double good. Some of the cards I want to show off here are the Skull Spore Nexus, Unnatural Growth, and Zopandrel Hunger Domus. So Skull Spore Nexus is 6 green legendary artifact. It costs X less to cast where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, you create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness equal to the total power of those creatures. So those things we're going to sack, guess what? We get another big thing out of it. In addition, for just 2 when we tap this, double target creature's power until end of turn. Now, whether we're doing that on the creature we are saddling to get some extra benefit, or that to the Gitrog monster itself, is a nice little action we can do. But very similarly, Unnatural Growth and Zopandrel Hunger Domus have that same ability, letting us double not only one, but all of our creatures during each combat, which is incredibly powerful. And Zopandrel also has the ability to gain Indestructible as well. So very, very cool. And let's read through the rest of those big stuff cards. We have Cultivator Colossus, Demigoth Titan, Demigoth Woe Eater, Gwenna Eyes of Gaia, Hunted Bone Brute, Gerard Golgari Lich Lord, Lupin Prototype, Panaceous Hammerskull, Relic Golem, Return of the Wild Speaker, Rishkar's Expertise, Rotting Regisaur, Shakedown Heavy, Sheltering Ancient, Vaultborn Tyrant, Yargle Imoltani, and Yargle Glutton of Urborg. So, like I kind of hinted at earlier, the next section we're going to talk about is Landfall, and I only included some cards that you really could include a lot more of Landfall-wise, because I think you're going to get some really great triggers in this deck. But before I do so, I just want to say, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. It would mean the world to me. So first off, obviously, this is Landfall stuff, but let's see lands equal value in some ways we don't normally see. So first off, we have Amulet of Vigor, Retreat to Hagar, and Spelunking. Amulet of Vigor is 1 generic artifact. Whenever a permanent enters battlefield tapped and under your control, untap it. Amulet of Vigor is a kind of staple card in a couple of formats. You have a lot of really cool ways to take advantage of this card, and obviously the Gitrog has all those lands come in tapped, so we can just instantly untap those and just start casting some more stuff with all those lands we just dumped on the battlefield. Retreat to Hagar is 2 and a black enchantment. Landfall, of course. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains Death Touch until end of turn, or each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I see some benefit for picking the first one, I guess. This really is only going to affect before, you go to combat, because all those combat triggers aren't going to do much good once we've already attacked. But then each opponent loses 1 and you gain 1. That seems pretty powerful. I mean, if you have a deck and you have, let's say you go 50 lands, I mean, you could pretty easily do that. I mean, there's a good chance you're going to get this card and deal a ton of damage with it. And then Spelunking, new enchantment from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, 2 and a green enchantment. When it enters battlefield, draw a card. Then you put a land from your hand on the battlefield. If you put a cave on the battlefield this way, you gain 4 life. And lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. I had no idea that this was a card, and this is incredible. I mean, it's definitely not as powerful as Amulet of Vigor, but just giving all of your lands entering untapped, this is a pretty versatile card I can see going in a lot of my existing decks. So, like I said, we have some Landfall triggers, and those are the 3 cards we're going to focus around next, with Bristly Bill, Spine Sower, Nissa of the Shadowed Bouts, and Obnixilis the Fallen. So Bristly Bill, Spine Sower, is 1 and a green legendary creature plant druid. This is one of the new legendary creatures from this set, and I'm very excited for it because it seems very fun. Landfall, whenever a land enters battlefield under control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Okay, that seems pretty good. But then for 3 green, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. That seems incredible. There's a lot of +1/+1 counter decks I think would really love to have Bristly Bill in there, because not only does he place counters, but he can double them. So Nissa of Shadowed Bouts, 2 black-green legendary creature, Planeswalker Nissa. Landfall, whenever a land enters battlefield under control, put a loyalty counter on Nissa of Shadowed Bouts. This seems pretty doable, if I'm going to be honest with you. +1, untap target land you control. You may have it become a 3/3 elemental creature token with haste and menace until end of turn it's still a land. Or -5, you may put a creature card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control onto the battlefield from your hand or graveyard with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. This is just incredible. I mean, if we can trigger the Gitrog every turn, there's no way we're not getting our back up to 5 or higher every turn, if you're sacking some of our biggest stuff. In addition, being able to pull stuff from our hand or graveyard, just casting it for free, is super great. So I'm very excited about that, and she just makes it bigger and bigger. And then Obnixilis the Fallen, 3 black legendary creature demon, landfall. Whenever a land enters battlefield under control, you may have target player lose 3 life. If you do, put 3+1/+1 counters on Obnixilis the Fallen. He just gets real big and deals a lot of damage, so this is pretty great. I think Obnixilis is a great call in this deck. You don't typically have a lot of landfall decks that play black because it's mainly mono green that you find that stuff, but let's look at some of the other cards from the landfall section here. We have Avenger of Zendikar, Cultivate, Lotus Cobra, Nature's Lore, Rampaging Baloths, Rampant Growth, and Tireless Provisioner. And then lastly, as always, we have the good stuff category, and I'm just showing you off a couple of cards that didn't really fit into those other 2 categories that I'm calling the good stuff. And we have Greater Good, Honest Rustin, and Silver Shroud Costume. So Greater Good is a older enchantment that has some really great benefits, especially in this deck. But for 2 green enchantment, sack a creature, draw cards equal to the sacked creature's power, then discard 3 cards. Okay, I like that a lot. We're going to take advantage of our big cheap creatures, sack them, gain some card draw. Maybe we need to find some stuff because we can't get through with the Gitrog or it's been killed a couple of times. This is a great way to power through our deck. Honest Rustin is 1 black-green legendary creature, human warlock, with whenever it enters battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, which seems pretty good. And creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Our spells are already super cheap, so just making them cheaper seems very powerful. And Silver Shroud Costume is 2 generic artifact equipment with flash. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. That creature gains Shroud until end of turn. Equipped creature can't be blocked. So one of the advantages of having this Silver Shroud Costume over another card, which I did include in the deck, which is Whisper Silk Cloak, is it gives it unblockable, but it gives it Shroud until end of turn. So maybe your opponents are doing stuff that, you don't want this to die, you can protect it, but then that Shroud goes away, so you're free to activate the saddle ability. If you did equip Whisper Silk Cloak, you just have to make sure that you move it and then saddle and then move it back. So it's kind of a pain, but it's one of the best ways to kind of get through, guaranteed. And your opponents can't really touch it. So the remaining good stuff cards we have here is Animate Dead, Arcane Signet, Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, Dark Ritual, Elvish Mystic, Eternal Witness, Heroic Intervention, Infernal Grasp, Llanowar Elves, Putrefy, Reanimate, Sovala, Heart of the Wilds, Soul Ring, Torment of Hailfire, Toxic Deluge, and Whisper Silk Cloak. Now, lastly, I did kind of build out the land base in this deck. It's really just all your good Golgari cards. I'm not going to read through them. The Gitrog doesn't say it has to be a basic land that you put on the battlefield tapped, so everything is free game. I think you kind of build this land base as good as possible to make sure you can cast everything you need to cast. But with that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you thought. Is there some other cards that are kind of sleepers that are really good in the Gitrog monster that no one, uses? I would love to know in the comments down below. In addition, if you could share this with a friend, leave a like and subscribe. That would help me out in so many ways. So thank you. So today's Scryfall card of the day is Temple of Malice. And this one is from the Doctor Who set. Mothership will maintain Earth's geostationary orbit. All systems fully operational. Attack Squad Delta, prepare to enter Transmat. But with that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.